Hi guys, so I'm really excited to be back for episode 4. We are your hosts. I am Cyndi.
And I'm Paige.
And this is Mom's the Word, where mom knows best.
Or at least she's trying her best. Speaking of trying your best, today we have a very special guest on the
excited.
podcast. My stepwife, Azita.
Woo, welcome Azita.
Hello.
Introduce
Thank you for
yourself.
having me. I'm Azita. I am Mark's ex-wife. Mark is Paige's husband. Yeah, and I'm happy to be here.
More importantly, the mother to my 2 oldest bonus sons.
Yes.
Most importantly.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So these are the 2 guys that we hear all the co-parenting about. That is just an amazing relationship that I think is a great representation of what co-parenting can be. Because I know not all relationships are like that. But I want to know like the tea here. So when you first met Paige, what was that like? What was your first, you met her. What did you think about that? I know you had 2 young boys. So I want to know.
They were young. Too. They were young.
They were little.
Yes.
They were little
Yeah.
voices.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's that like?
So I actually remember the very first time I met Paige because it really was a love at first sight thing. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was driving the boys over there, and Vance had spilled something all over himself, which is a very Vance thing to do.
Very.
And yes. And I get to Mark's house, and I don't even have time to say hi to Paige.
Mhm.
I just see this woman, and I've got this kid who's just like covered, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do? And as I'm, rushing him in to, get him over to the bathroom, get him cleaned up, like Paige just comes out of nowhere with a towel and just starts helping me. So it was like immediate co-parenting.
Yeah.
There was no like, that's how we met. And then it's like, oh, hi. Nice to
Hello.
meet you.
I heard so much about you.
Yes. And I just knew. I was like, this is the person that I want to be my boy's stepmom.
Oh my gosh.
And there was definitely times where I would say to Mark, don't mess this up for me.
Oh my God.
For me. Instead of for him.
Yes.
Don't mess this up
Yes.
for me.
I love that. It
So-
made it so natural because she just jumped in to help.
Yes.
I'm like,
This says a lot about someone's character.
and as a mom who's
Yeah.
like so protective
Yeah.
of their kids.
Yeah, I'm protective of my kids
Yeah.
too, so I could see how that would have been.
Yeah.
Really
Because it
cool.
could have went a different way, right? Because like
Yeah.
Paige didn't have kids,
Totally.
this young thing, and like, oh, it could have went away. So that's really great.
Yeah, I think I was intimidated, honestly, because it's like
Yeah.
you're meeting an ex-wife who is the mother of his kids. Like, there's no deleting this character from his life. She's there. And I think that there's no reason for people to have that animosity towards the ex when it's dead and done. And her and Mark were dead and done.
Mhm.
There was no
Mhm.
romance between the 2 of them. There was nothing to be jealous of. There was never anything that made me feel uncomfortable. So I do always say with a grain of salt whenever it comes to co-parenting that there are situations that it's going to make it very, very difficult. And I think that if she had made me feel jealous going in, maybe it would have been different. I'm not necessarily a jealous person, but I am a little territorial,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to my man. So she never made me feel like that. So it was just so easy to transition into honestly just being friends and trying to figure out our relationship so that our kids could thrive. I think both of us kind of grew up with co-parenting situations. You have step-parents, I had step-parents. And not to speak on your situation, but I know that mine wasn't awesome.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted so badly to make sure that she felt respected as well as it was understood that she was the mom and I was not coming in to be their mother. I really just, I wanted to be with Mark. They were bonus for me. It was like, oh my gosh, I've got these 2 boys now that love me. And there's just nothing, it's priceless whenever a child loves you like that. There's just nothing like a love from a child that it's just so innocent and they just look at you and love you and it just makes you feel so good. And I knew whenever I really fell in love with the boys, I was like, oh, I'm in this. I'm so deep in this. There's no way I'm ever going to be able to let them go. They were just so special to me. And I know that if I want a good relationship with them, I need a good relationship with her.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like for you, it's scary to have another woman come in and parent your children.
Absolutely.
And so I feel like each of you had to give 100% to each other, but the kids were the most important thing.
Yes.
Like that's what you had to put first, right? Was that hard for you to accept or was it easy with Paige?
I think it was easy with Paige because I feel like Paige was always respectful of the fact that you're mom
Mm-hmm.
and, I'm going to respect the things that are important to you.
Yeah.
And your principles and your vision for the boys. And so, I think as long as, like you said, and it's with every relationship, both people have to give 100%.
Mm-hmm.
50 isn't enough. No. And so, and, going back to what she said about both of us having step parents, we both had divorced parents. And I think that was a big contributor because we know what it's like to be in that situation. And I was lucky as well. She has a great stepmom. So we kind of won the step parent lottery. We have really good role models for step parents.
Yes, absolutely.
I have 2 step parents who I love fiercely and who treated me just like their own children, the amount of love that I received. And so they were such good influences.
Yeah, I was going to say that you sound like you both had at least one good role model.
Right. And so I think it was important for us to continue that and take what we learned and give that to our kids. It
mattered. It mattered to both of us from the very beginning. There was a deep childhood connection with needing this to be a good relationship for our kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think it's something that has impacted your children? Like, what have you seen that they've noticed? Or is it just something that you feel that they think has always been there?
Absolutely. I think we do things as a family. Yeah. And I think our boys are so lucky because they don't feel torn on holidays.
Yeah.
My family, my parents invite Mark and Paige to Christmas, Thanksgiving, anything they want to be at. Paige invites my family over.
Love that.
And it's so important. Birthdays, we go out together.
Yeah.
And, you know.
Even our birthdays as parents.
Yeah.
Even if it's one of our birthdays. Yeah. The whole family gets together.
So the kids still feel like they have this united family. They don't feel torn. And I think that's important because that can take a toll on a kid's emotional state, especially as teenagers.
Yes.
And so, I think it was important for us, for the kids to just have that real warm kind of, this is my village.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it also brings so much guilt onto the child too, because then the choosing, I'm going to upset mommy, I'm going to upset daddy, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, that can be really hard for a child to have to navigate through that. And I know that personally, that, whenever I got pregnant, remember, you threw me a second baby shower just because my mom was not comfortable being with my stepmom at a baby shower. Right. So we had 2 separate ones. And I can remember being like, I'm not doing that for my wedding shower. I can't do 2 all the time. And it was really put me in that place of like, I don't want to choose. I shouldn't have to, but I also shouldn't have to do 2 events just because my parents can't exist in the same room.
Absolutely.
So.
Unfortunately, you guys are leading the way in that, being so great with each other. And something I find really interesting is that you have older children and a drastic age gap, but it has flowed so flawlessly because I've been there with both of them there, and she's holding the baby, she has Boston, and then they're interacting with the older boys, and I just find that dynamic so interesting.
Yeah.
Like there's no, the boy's mom's coming over. There's none of that.
No.
And I love that.
Yeah. I mean, I feel very lucky that not only do I love her children very, very much, obviously, I feel like they are my children as well. They're my bonus babies, I feel like you feel the exact same way for my kids.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think, really, your kids are half of my kids. Yeah. They share 50% of their genetics.
That's right.
And so I think that's, of course I'm going to love them.
Yeah. It's important.
It's easy to love them. And not to mention that they're like the cutest.
I know. They are so cute.
Thank you. I think that it'll just be so important as they go on later down the road. They won't see you as, those are my brother's mom.
Right.
That's Zizi.
Yeah.
She's a part of our life, not just theirs.
Yes.
So I think that's important.
Mom's the Word podcast is recorded at the Museum of Neon Lights in Frisco, Texas.
It is a selfie studio open to the public.
Mention the podcast and you'll get an exclusive 10% off.
So I love that it's such a great dynamic, but I really want to know, was it always that way? Was there ever any, turmoil or negative energy? Come on now.
So
their faces.
Well, we had one very large fight, I will say. Very large fight. May have been fueled a little bit by pregnancy hormones.
I think let's be fair.
Okay.
Paige and I are both kind of like spicy people.
Okay.
We're
right?
feisty in a way.
And so I think, and I want to say this, and actually we kind of talked about this beforehand, and I said, I want to make sure that we let people know that it's not perfect all the time.
Right.
It takes work. Like any relationship, it takes a lot of work.
Right.
It takes
Absolutely.
2 people working, and in our case, multiple people working. And so, we have had times where we've, had disagreements, and we had one where we went pretty head to head, and it was a few years ago. And
About 4, I want to
Is
say.
it?
Yeah, it's been about 4 years. It was the very first year of mine and Mark's relationship. I know that much.
okay.
Yeah.
And you weren't pregnant because we drank.
Correct.
Yes.
When
Maybe-
the fight happened, I was
Yeah.
pregnant. Because remember, I was like, don't come to the hospital when Boston's born.
Okay.
Ooh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it got hot.
It got
hot.
pretty intense to where it was
Okay.
like, can we bounce back from this?
Yeah.
But
And honestly, I think it was a miscommunication more than anything.
Yeah.
It was an argument via text messages.
Text
Oh,
message.
the worst.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you can never understand
No.
somebody's intent or how they're saying something
Sure.
via text message. And then once you're getting 4 or 5 at a time and your fingers are just clicking, I mean, we just
Things
are
come
both
out that are
not the
not
one to
supposed to be.
stop. We
Yes.
just won't stop, either
Yes.
of us.
So the way that we resolved this is we went out, just the 2 of us,
Mhm.
and we drank wine.
We went to dinner.
Yeah. I don't know. how
We
else
went to
put that.
dinner. We did.
But we had a glass of wine, and we talked
First.
about it face to face.
Which is important.
And really, it taught me a lot, just in general, about how important face-to-face communication
Yes.
is.
Yeah.
Because once we were face-to-face, all of that was gone. It's easy to
Yeah.
sit behind a phone and be like, blah, 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 blah. But when you're in front of somebody you care about, and
You can show your real emotions.
you're seeing their
feel
face,
their-
and you're
Mhm.
in their presence, like, you don't want to be mean. Like,
Yes.
Feel the energy of
Yeah.
the room is not animosity.
Yes.
It's more misunderstanding.
That's right.
And so we did. And before that, we had a few little, I think, tiffs that were small. But I feel like after that, it changed our dynamic completely because
100%.
we don't ever want to be in that position again. So we're going to bite our
Right.
tongues.
Mhm.
We know how bad it felt,
Yes.
and we don't want to be there. And so I think we've also learned, it takes years to really learn people's buttons or,
Yes.
and all that stuff, and just being really mindful of that. And so I think we're so careful just to treat each other gently and just keep the relationship positive. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I think we also know like what the other one expects whenever it comes to how they want to be respected.
Absolutely.
And I think that made all the difference for her and I in a
Yeah.
big way, is because for a while there, we were just trying to figure out, like, who are you? You're just this new woman in my life. And of course, God love Mark. We love you, Mark. He is the middleman in that a
Absolutely.
lot of the time, whereas he will start something and then they get into an argument and then she'll say something to him and I'll be like, hey, that's my husband still. But then
Yes.
sometimes he'll say something to her and I'll be like, hey,
Uh-huh.
that's our
Uh-huh.
stepwife here, chill. So it kind of went back and
Our
forth for a
stepwife.
while. Yeah, it kind of went back and forth. But that one time was, I genuinely think, the only time that we ever had like a real, like, I was like, I don't know if me and her are going to be able to be friends in this. I think
Yeah.
this may just be co-parenting.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, it wasn't a month. Like,
Yeah.
it was not long because it was right at the
Yeah.
end whenever I was having Boston. I may have been like a few days away from having Boston. And then, because you were out of town and I went into labor that Sunday that you were flying back home.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, she, it was.
That was your second one?
The second pregnancy?
No, it was with Boston.
No, I was pregnant with Boston. Yeah.
But you said you drank wine.
Yes,
Oh,
after
after.
I had
So-
the baby.
Oh, I understand.
I was
Yeah.
about to have him.
Okay.
I was like a few days away from having Boston.
Wait, so your hormones were already.
Oh, girl, I was going
She'll never
through
get a
it.
pregnant woman, too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going through it big time. And
Oh, my
so
goodness.
it was about a month after Boston was born. We were like, let's go to dinner and let's just sit
I love
down
that.
and have a conversation.
Being in person is way better, especially
Yeah.
for you two who gonna have to be around each other. Like,
Yeah.
it's way more important for your kids.
Yeah.
What is it, or why is it that you think that's so important? If you were going to give a family advice on why it's important to do that, what's that reason? Because, like, obviously we're going to say the kids is the reason,
Yeah.
but you guys have a lot of background from being from, divorced homes and things. So what would you tell a family who is going through that?
I think it's important for the kids, but for yourself too. It's
mental
self-care.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
Nobody wants to be around somebody that drains
Yeah.
them. that makes
Right.
them feel uncomfortable, that doesn't make them feel like they belong.
Mhm.
So if her and I didn't have a friendship, there's just too many things that our kids do that we're at together that would
Absolutely.
make the situations
Yeah.
so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And instead, we're on the sidelines cheering together,
Yeah.
not sitting on
Yeah.
opposite sides of
Yeah.
the court, you
Yeah.
know?
And like homecoming, we're picking mom stuff together.
Yeah.
And we're collaborating on his suit and what's
I
going
love
on.
that
And,
so
we
much.
do a lot of collaborating.
Did you
and
pick up the flowers?
Yeah.
Did you order the mom? Yeah.
Yes.
It's I mean,
Yeah.
we both, we're always
Yeah.
bouncing off each other, I think, with
Yeah.
ideas. And even kind of in discipline ways, we
Yeah.
kind of bounce off of each other.
Yeah.
Like, she'll be like, they're not listening to me. I need you. Or I'll be like,
Right.
hey, I have this going on. I need you to kind of butt in, because I think that
She's
the
more of the
kids-
disciplinarian, which I love.
Yeah.
Which is good
Because
though, because she can be the bad guy.
Yeah.
And
Well, yeah. And I don't think it's be the bad guy. She's just better at, I don't know. She's a little
Straightforward.
bit better at being straightforward.
Mhm.
Where I'll sugarcoat a little bit more. She's just very direct.
Mhm.
And
Thanks,
they
Dad.
hear her a little bit better. They tell me that it's funny when I'm mad.
I'm wondering if
yeah.
one day when the littles are older, if there'll be that still dynamic there where Paige is like, okay, I'm tapped out for a minute. What are you
Right?
thinking? Like,
Yeah.
you don't know, but like, that'd be a wonderful thing to have.
Yeah.
I hope so. I
Yeah,
genuinely
you can
hope
only
that
hope.
when
Yeah.
they turn 18, it doesn't dissipate.
Yeah.
Obviously, her life will change drastically.
Yes.
She's single. She's single. Just saying. So I know that there's going to be fun and travel and things coming so soon.
Right.
And so it's like everything in my world is about to change in the next
Yes.
2 years. And the only thing that I hope we hang on to in this time is that we remain a unit and a family, because the little kids want those traditions just as much as the
Absolutely.
big kids do. And so
Yeah.
I think that it will be important for our families in a large way. Touching on like what you said, like why do you think it's so important
Yes.
to have this type of relationship? Especially, obviously, it's the kids are going to be the most important, of course. And I agree, mental health, like being in the same room with somebody that you dislike is never comfortable. So
Yeah.
it does help that we're like see each other and we're like, hey, like run to each other instead of run away.
Yes.
I can remember at graduation, my parents sat on opposite sides of the stadium. So I
Mm.
had to find one set and then I had to
Yes.
find the other set because they couldn't, be together. And that was always really stressful. And I think that was, to me, the most important thing was that I knew what it was like to come from that broken side. And I didn't want to do that to her kids
Mhm.
because ultimately I'm the outsider here.
Yeah.
I'm the one that's come in and made it weird. And at a young age, let's be fair, you just see mommy and daddy. And so
Mhm.
most of the time, you want mommy and daddy
That's
to
right.
be back together.
Right.
And you want them to work things out because you love mommy and daddy. And that's what everybody on Disney Channel does,
Yes.
So that to me was a big deal, was that I would come in and respect them enough that they
Yes.
could fall in love with me too. And find a place in their heart, not to replace anybody in, but a new space to open up. Something else for me to fit into.
Yeah.
I didn't want to replace her spot, and they knew that from the very beginning. I always say that is your mother, and I'm ultimate about respecting their mother too. That's a big thing for me. So it's easy for me to step in as the bonus mom, as the stepmom,
Yes.
because I knew my place, and they knew where I was supposed to fit. And I've always loved them from the very, very beginning. I have always loved them.
Yeah. I love that. So we've discussed a lot, and I feel like you guys have given a lot of advice, and I feel like those have been great tips for families that are going through this. Are there any other tips you could give, or do you feel like just having your wall down a little bit towards that is the best advice you could give?
I think it's so important to put down your pride.
Mhm. It's a good one.
It's just important to keep the big picture, which is the happiness of the whole family, the harmony. Focus on harmony. It just makes life easier. I know that for us, it probably came a little bit easier.
Yeah.
But
We are lucky in that
still
sense.
Yeah.
had to work. And I
Yes.
think other people
Yes.
can choose. And sometimes maybe if you're getting a little bit of pushback or you're not feeling the love from the other person, it's okay to reach out. It's okay to be the person that puts down your pride and says, hey, let's work on a relationship here. And maybe at first, you're going to get some pushback, but just I think, staying committed to that.
Mhm.
I do think there's a lot of people that can have what Paige and I have if they just kind of work on that relationship. So
Absolutely. I saw a quote the other day that said, I have to remind myself that I have someone's childhood in my hands.
Oh,
And that to
so
me
important.
is so important because it ultimately, for me as an adult, my childhood has affected every single part of who I am,
Right.
down to my
Yes.
anxiety, down to how I carry myself, how this relationship goes, how I am as a mother. It is quite definitely defining me in
Right.
every way.
Right.
So that is so important to me that my children, I mean, I'll check in with our children on multiple occasions. I just had this conversation the other day with Vance where I said, hey, nobody handed me a handbook. Nobody
right.
gave me a guide to be a good
Mhm.
parent.
Absolutely.
Do you need anything more from me?
I love that
This
so
is a
much.
safe space.
That's
Am I
right.
being rude? Am I being snippy in situations? What do you need from me as your stepmom? And am I delivering that to you?
I love that so
And
much.
so I think that's the most important thing is that not only do I come into this with ultimate respect for her as a mother, but I also come into it with ultimate respect for them as children. And I think that makes it a lot easier for us too, because I am not coming in just to try to mother them and change them and show them things. I'm genuinely just kind of the cheerleader here of like, mommy says you need to be like this, you need to be like this, you're doing it, go ahead, that type of thing. It's not my responsibility to change who they are as people.
Right. It's so important to respect their whole being.
Mhm.
Right? Like respecting your child's whole being means their body, their physical, the people who are around them, and that includes adults who are help parenting them. And that's so important because I have to parent other people's children all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And respecting them is hard sometimes. And
Oh,
so you
yeah.
guys are a great influence in that, just seeing that it can be so positive. So I love that.
So I just wanted to say maybe one more thing.
Yeah,
on the
absolutely.
tips.
Yes.
These are two big things that also I think can be really helpful. One is apologizing.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
I
that's a
think,
good one.
because sometimes when you start to get worked up a little bit, maybe you say something, but
Yes.
you can teach yourself to just back off and go, I'm sorry, I was going down the wrong direction,
Yes.
and let's
Yeah.
pull that back.
Mhm.
Or even with the kids, sometimes we snap at our kids, and
Yeah.
being able to go to them and
Yes.
say, hey, I messed up. I'm going to take accountability.
Mhm.
I apologize. I think that's a good lesson for
It is.
families as a whole.
And for your children.
And I
For your
think in
children,
that
yes.
same subject, grace, giving people grace. We're all going to mess up.
Mhm.
We're all going to say things we don't mean. We're all going to do something that upsets someone else. And anyways, I think it's important to just keep a mindset of grace and understanding that,
Yeah.
not
And again,
everybody's
they're
perfect
watching
all
us
the time.
always. So the way you guys are
Always.
doing is going to affect them and even how they treat their spouses when they're older and the advice they give to other people. So I think that's so important to lead by example.
And if they ever end up into a co-parenting relationship, I hope
Yes.
that they will be able to say, we can make this work. I saw my mom's do this, and I would have never known as a child that it was any different than what
That's
a
right.
normal childhood would have been.
Yeah.
That's my hope, is that they're not caused so much stress from the situation, because I think divorce is hard on any child, even if it's amicable and good.
That's our hope.
So I hope that they look back and think, yeah, my parents were divorced, but we were all so happy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's all you can hope for.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are doing a great job with that. So thank you for being a great role model. We're so happy you came on here.
Yeah.
I would love to have her on for more question and answers. If you guys have questions for her, leave them below. She'll be in the comments for a little while. But thank you guys for being here.
Of course.
Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure. I'm sure there will be more questions.
Absolutely.
And I can get her back up here, I promise.
Absolutely.
All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us today for a very, very special episode. One that is going to be very special to me because, of course, I love Azita. She is my stepwife,
I
as
love
we
it.
call her. So thanks so much for coming.
And as always, guys, keep the giggles going.
And the love flowing.
And until next time.
Mom knows best.
Or at least she's trying her best.
Yeah.